So thanks everyone for being here and for doing their best to stay up and getting ready for lunch. I promise you, I have 20 minutes of your time. I'm not going to waste them. I have a great story to tell you about a process that we've done in ING about how do you really streamline data science all across the organization. And in general, if you have any other questions with regards to data science topics or driving innovation in a big organization or any non-data science related topic, as you can see here, feel free to grab me after this talk. So I've been in ING for almost 5 years now. And for those of you who don't know ING is one of the largest banks in Europe. We have over 38 million customers. And I think one of the leading banks on the world with regards to NPS, customer satisfaction. And usually when you think about data science in banking, it could sound a little bit boring, but I have to tell you that banking, especially European banking, in the last 5 years is one of the more interesting and tumultuous environments that you can work in. And just took 3 of the focus points with those regards. So number one, you probably all know, interest rates are historically low. If any of you pay mortgages, then you know that floating payments has dropped significantly, and also the revenues from bank accordingly. All of you know GDPR, I assume, but how many of you know PSD2 by show of hands? Oh, wow. Quite a lot. That's pretty cool. So for those of you who don't know PSD2, it's basically open banking. So if up until now, when you wanted to do banking activities, you had to go through the bank or through your banking applications, banks will be forced now to open all customer data and their services to any third party that a customer enables. So that means that if I am a Google, an Apple, or any other one of those lovely fintechs that you see over here just from the Netherlands side, I can give you banking services without you ever having to engage with the bank. And that's really scary for banks who had these nodes for a very long time. So how does a bank succeed? How does it prosper under this kind of environment? Well, our purpose is to empower people and to stay ahead in life and in business. But if you look into our key strategy, then you will see 3 main elements: analytics, innovation, and coming up with new business models. And I would argue that data science is at the key of all of those. So what do we do in ING? So we have 2 types of changes, if you can say. The first one is trying to transform the entire organization, all 50,000 employees, to really transition to this new world, that data is the source for the new business models, for engagement with customers. And that's quite a lot of training, and that's quite a lot of trying to rethink and adjusting. And on the other side, we have some core elements, some core areas where we are focusing on data science and big data projects. I'm going to focus on one of them right now, which is customer interaction. So I am a member of a group within ING called OnetoOne Analytics. And the idea behind OnetoOne Analytics is that we want to drive all of our customer interactions by data. We want to enable the entire organization to understand what the customer wants, when does he want it, and in what channel they're interested in, both to drive business objectives, but also to make our customers extremely happy. And helping your customer at the right point makes them happy. Within our OnetoOne Analytics, we're about 160 strong, maybe a little more as well. And we are mainly composed of data analysts, data scientists, and data engineers under this rubric. And also some customer journey experts that we engage with frequently and provide trainings and engage with on campaigns and results that they are making. Just by a show of hands, how many of you see yourselves in one of those rubrics or managing one of those rubrics? Okay, yeah, this is the audience. Great. So again, I know that in some organizations they have different definitions for some of those, and I think that if I use those phrases, you'll be able to figure out what I refer to. But feel free to challenge me also later. So model industrialization, and why do we need it? So here's a real use case that we have. So Christina, she wanted to create a campaign for Black Friday. And we have two types of products, for example, a regular credit card and a platinum credit card. And well, Christina, she wants to contact the customers that will be relevant for these products. She doesn't want to just spam all of ING customers. So she has two options. She can either go to a data analyst and ask him to do some sort of fancy BIing, trying to figure out who are the customers that buy the product, and come up with some business rules for selection. Or she can go to a data scientist to build a likelihood model, something that will be able to rank customers and tell her who are the customers that are more or less likely to get the product. For the very, very vast majority of the cases, it goes through the data analyst. And I can talk a little bit about the reasoning behind why it happens. Like we saw before, that there are much more data analysts than there are data scientists. There is some setup time involving with data scientists going into a new project. But regardless, whenever we do this kind of thing, we are missing out on some of the capabilities of using models. So we want to enable something that enables the user, in our case, Christina, the customer journey expert, to expand their selection if needed, if they don't meet their objectives. We want to learn. So basically, if a customer has not responded before, we don't want to contact them necessarily again because that creates ad blindness. We want to be relevant. And when we're doing this BI work, we are limited by our own understanding of the world, while it might be much more complex. So we want to empower, right? We want to give models, right? At the same time, I have to tell you, even if we do want to give models, there is some cultural issues that's worth addressing. So we were asking people, why don't you use models? Or why don't you do very good science all across the board? And well, I guess without any real easy way of saying this, fear of automation is real. People really feel empowered by their work. And whenever you tell them, hey, there is a new way of doing things, or there is something that might take a function that you are currently responsible on, then people get defensive, right? They feel like, I know my customer. I know who to contact, and I get personal satisfaction. And quite frankly, I don't see much value in going forward. So whenever you're developing a data science product, and you want to make an impact in your entire organization, you really want to make sure that you're empowering your end user, which in our case would be the data analysts and customer journey experts, and not replacing them. So we come up with this sort of objective, right? We want to democratize model building. So we want to empower data analysts in a way that enables them to create models the same way that a data scientist would. And we want to make it so easy and so fast so that they will feel like, this is the way to go. And not only are these guys taking away my job, but I get to know more about my customer. I get to be able to do much more as an individual, and I gain personal efficiency and satisfaction, which is quite challenging. But this is our approach, and I think you've seen it maybe a little bit if you've been to the Airbnb talk about Big Head. So we talk about a model factory, and the idea is that we want, given some sort of a model recipe, some sort of specification on what is that we want to build, we will be able to use some sort of building blocks developed by data scientists, data analysts, and data engineers to build a model. And it's something a little bit similar, I guess, to the things you saw on AutoML. That model is basically a scoring function, something that, given a customer, gives you some sort of likelihood, right? How likely is that customer going to, let's say, to buy a product, yes or no? And you want that these results will be able to eventually integrate to the rest of the ING systems and communicate to those data analysts and customer journey experts. And if you're interested also in some other resources to kind of kick things off, in your case, check out those resources. The key element, and if you want to take a picture, I think this is one of the two important ones to take. The key element is the building blocks, right? And when you are building something that is going to work for a wide variety of use cases, there are a lot of features that are required. And I think that if you look into different technologies or different approaches, there are these like one solves all solutions, but they sometimes miss one part or another. It's still up to the organization to make sure that all of them are covered in one way or another. And I will dive into just some of them due to time, the ones in orange. So I think the first day that we were here, we heard the talk that Andrew Ng said that if you want to do one thing, you have to build a unified data warehouse. This is our unified data warehouse, our data lake, where different data dumps from different ING systems go into the lake. We use data engineers to really process these data lakes to a structured data sources. And from there on, data scientists and data analysts work together to build what's called a data analytics-based table. So a list of features or a list of views on top of the customer. And it's important to mention that this is a building block. So that means the next time that we want to build a model, we already have that available, right? So a data analyst doesn't need to already start thinking about what kind of features might be interesting for my case, because it's already ready and readily available. How many data scientists here? Just so I can see by hand. A little bit less than the rest. One of the key issues that, or one of the key challenges, let's say, I see often with data scientists is with regards to how do they do validation. And often they just take something like a k-fold or cross-validation to meet, just to fit the hyperparameters. There are some more intelligent selections with regards to how do you build your models, because the idea behind validation sets is to enable your model to generalize further. And what we did is we added as building blocks several of these cross-validators, both from this one that you see on time series, both on stratified data in case you have unevenly distributed acquisitions. So we've created all of these different ways to test and validate and build models, so that the next time that someone wants to build a model, they just take one from the box, and we have defaults. It's really important to have defaults so that eventually those model recipes that data analysts create end up being something like 10 or 15 lines. Fancy technology, image slides. We mainly use Spark as our framework. And just before me, there was the AutoML talk. We actually leveraged on top of a couple of Python packages for those purposes as well. Basically, AutoML is about trying to find out the best hyperparameters to use and find out different models to experiment with. Some really good open source packages, and check out the Georgian partners comparison. And the last point I wanted to address is fairness, and that's a tricky one, because, as I said before, it's also about making the organization understand what do you mean when you talk about fairness in AI. But I'll give you a concrete example. So we talked before about credit card acquisition, and that's, I guess, not so important with regards to who do you send emails to about that credit card offering. But when a data analyst, and again, this is a real use case, when a data analyst will want to use this model for example, figuring out which customers are going to be invited for meeting with a mortgage advisor as opposed to receiving a phone call or counseling on the phone, then it starts to get tricky. Then you want to make sure that people that you want to maximize your potential to eventually sell mortgages, but you also want to make sure that the people that get these opportunities to get mortgages aren't all married couple who work in the high-tech industries, right? You want to make sure that these people are representing across your entire customer population. And two really important resources, at least two great resources that I've found, to explain that topic is from Google, Attacking Discrimination with Smarter Machine Learning. Really cool interface, really clear explanation. And if you want to really play around and experiment with it, IBM's Fairness AI 360, great resource, and very simple to play around with. So we're almost there. So what do we do with our model factory products? So there are several products all around the way, as we mentioned, and we have different roles. And each of those roles need something else or need to know something else. So, for example, data engineer, they want to make sure that the data distribution doesn't change over time, or that missing data isn't there. Data scientists want to make sure models are built to a quality level satisfaction. Customer journey experts want to know who does my model target so that I can create a message that fits them. So quite a lot of interesting questions to ask, and I do want to also refer to a paper by Google AI on what's your ML test score, which really lists out what are the things that they test when they put a model in production and during development. A really good resource for that. We have our own monitoring system, as you can see right here. Really to try to find out, let's say, what is the summary of your data, of your prediction. I won't go into too much of this because I have the second slide that's worth taking picture of, and that is about the reporting instrument. So when you engage with your customer journey experts, you can't just give them technical metrics. You have to give them the data in some engaging manner, in a way that they can explore. And I think that if I listed out a couple of things that we are experimenting with and have already received feedback on, things that actually work when you communicate with data analysts and customer journey experts. And I want to show you just a few that might not be so trivial, because I assume that some of you have already seen lift curves or cumulative gains. So one of the initial questions that we had from a data analyst is, how do I make sure that the model makes sense? Like I have my own model, right? So one of the things that we wanted to show is to kind of compare the difference between their own model and the ranking of the model. So what you see here is basically the customers rank from most relevant to least relevant. And on orange, that's basically the cover of the selection of the data analyst. And you can see that it shows that, well, the model, you're not completely off, data analyst. You're making sense, but you're missing some important stuff. Another really important one that's really used is customer segmentation. So basically, a model is able to split your data into different buckets or different segments. And it's really important for you to be able to communicate to a customer journey expert, what does each of these segments mean? Who are these customers that the model picked up? And we found that some sort of a way to visualize the customers' clusters with the level of target is a really good approach for it. And then they're able to more deep dive into their own system. And the last one is about comparing models. So before we had that exercise with those two separate models, they had only one selection for both products. We decided for fun to try to build two models separately. And what we saw is that there is a group of customers that are not interested at all at credit cards. But there are some customers that are interested in both. And specifically, there are some customers that are more interested in one than another. So this kind of finding helps the data analysts and customer journey experts to figure out who to target with what message. So to wrap up, that was the model factory. And those are some selected resources that I hope you can take on and follow up in your project as well. I can tell you that we really feel strongly about this in a way that really engages with the data analysts and customer journey experts. And with this, I'll be very happy to take your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.